I don't actually think attendance is about attendance. And I definitely don't think school secretaries just answer phones.
No, they don't. It's closer to air traffic control, actually.
Right? I love that.
If you really look at the dynamics of a school building, right, if you actually peel back the layers, the most influential leadership position in that entire ecosystem rarely has the word principal on the door.
Which is wild to think about.
It is, but it's the person sitting at the front desk. They are the ones actually deciding if the planes land safely or, if they crash into each other on the runway.
Yeah, and before we go any further, I want to bring you into this. Yes, you, listening right now. Think about your own school, or like a school you went to growing up, or where your kids go. Be honest with yourself. When a panicked parent or a crying student walks through those double doors, who is the very first person they look for?
Well, it's not the superintendent
Exactly. It's not the principal. It is the person at that front desk.
every single time.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. We are looking at the foundational philosophy of Office Manager University, or OMU. And our mission today isn't to talk about how to file papers or route phone calls.
Right. It's much bigger than that.
The goal here is to radically redefine the heartbeat of school operations by completely flipping how we view office work.
Which is desperately needed because the way we traditionally look at this role is, frankly, insulting to the complexity of what's actually happening in that room.
It's completely backward. I mean, almost all professional development for school offices starts on the ground.
Yeah, they just teach the checklist.
Right, how to use the new software, how to route a voicemail. But to actually understand the OMU philosophy and the true power of this role, we have to climb to an altitude where the breathing gets a little harder. We have to go up to 20,000 feet.
Because traditional training fails for a very specific reason. It assumes the job is purely transactional. It teaches the what and the how.
Like how to answer the phone or enroll a student.
Exactly, or how to organize cumulative records.
Mechanics, basically.
The mechanics, yeah. But OMU's philosophy dictates something entirely different. It says that before you can ever teach the task, you have to teach the purpose.
Right.
Before you hand someone a checklist, you really have to instill the responsibility.
Okay, so let's unpack this because you mentioned going to 20,000 feet. Walk me through this airplane analogy that OMU uses because I think it perfectly illustrates why the transactional mindset is a trap.
So picture yourself sitting on a runway in a commercial jet. You're in the window seat, you're looking out, and what do you actually see?
Just the tarmac.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a baggage cart driving by.
Right, you see a guy in an orange vest. Your view is entirely obstructed by what is immediately in front of your face.
You just have no sense of scale.
Exactly. When an office professional is operating at ground level, they only see today's tasks. The ringing phone, the broken stapler, the angry email from a vendor.
Just constantly putting out fires.
Yeah, and when you only see the immediate tasks, you are just surviving. You are reacting to whatever jumps in front of you. It's a defensive posture.
Yeah.
But as that airplane takes off and climbs to 20,000 feet, what happens to your view out that window?
It expands, like the buildings shrink.
You see the entire city. You see how the highway connects to the suburban neighborhoods, how the river winds through the downtown core.
Right.
Suddenly, the chaos on the ground makes sense because you see the grid, you see the purpose. When office professionals can look at their school from 20,000 feet, they aren't just working a desk anymore.
They're leading.
They are leading. They see how a calm interaction at the front desk impacts a student's behavior in a classroom 3 hours later. They see the whole ecosystem.
I hear that. I really do. But I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second because if I'm staring down a jammed copier and I have 3 phone lines blinking red and a kid who just threw up in the clinic,
Yeah, it's pure chaos.
a 20,000-foot view of purpose doesn't unjam the paper. I mean, isn't this just corporate fluff? To me, a school office is like an emergency room. It's triage. You just need to stop the bleeding, not philosophize about the meaning of the blood.
What's fascinating here is that you're entirely right about the triage, but you're missing the psychology of the emergency room.
Okay, tell me more.
Yes, you have to stop the bleeding. But the 20,000-foot view doesn't unjam the copier. It changes how you treat the stressed-out, hyperventilating first-year teacher who is standing next to the copier.
Because she needs those math tests in 3 minutes.
Exactly.
Okay, but I want to push back on that. I see your point about the teacher's mood, but that still means the math tests aren't printed.
Yeah.
How does this philosophy actually reconcile the logistical failure with the cultural win? The machine is still broken.
That is the crux of it. A mechanical failure combined with a cultural failure is a disaster. If you are at ground level, that teacher is an annoyance.
Right, she's just in the way.
She is in the way of your task. You snap at her and say, "Can't you see I'm busy?" She walks into her classroom flustered, feeling totally unsupported, which means 33rd graders have a terrible morning.
The ripple effect.
Yes, the mechanical failure caused a massive cultural ripple. But if you are at 20,000 feet, you realize you can't fix the machine, but you can manage the human.
Oh, wow.
You say, "I know you need these. The machine is down, but I see you. Go start your class. I will find a different copier and hand deliver these to your room in 10 minutes.
So the 20,000-foot view gives you the grace to de-escalate the panic.
You just turned a logistical failure into a moment where that teacher feels profoundly supported.
That makes total sense. It's not about the machine, it's about the human relying on the machine.
Precisely. The 20,000-foot view shifts the job from completing a mechanical task to actively protecting the school's culture.
And this raises a massive question. Who actually figured this out? Because I can promise you, this philosophy didn't come from a boardroom. It didn't come from a textbook written by a consultant who hasn't stepped foot in a public school since they were a teenager.
No, it definitely didn't. And to actually understand this, we have to look at how this entire framework was forged. It was a complete trial by fire.
So where do we start?
Let's go back to 2008. The founder of OMU was in their very first year as a school secretary.
Which is already overwhelming just by itself.
Completely. But imagine this scenario. It's 9:05 a.m. on a Tuesday. The desk is buzzing, and within a span of about 4 minutes, 3 different directives hit the desk.
Okay.
First, there's a demand to immediately calm down a highly influential, irate parent waiting in the lobby, requiring perfect diplomacy.
Stressful, but typical for a school.
Seconds later, there's a demand for a brand new, visually stunning bulletin board to welcome a VIP guest touring the school, requiring intense creative design.
Right.
And before that's even processed, there's a highly confidential demand to aggressively restructure a calendar and block access to an executive's office for the rest of the day.
Wait, hang on. Those are just random tasks. Those are completely different priorities. You're talking about different bosses, aren't you?
Exactly. Because of how the building was structured, they didn't work for one principal. They sat at one desk and they worked for 3 different principals simultaneously.
Just let that sink in for a second. Think about how stressful it is to manage the expectations of one boss. Now multiply that by 3. All funneling to a single desk.
And these weren't 3 principals with a unified vision. These were 3 distinctly different leaders with completely different demands on the front office.
Wow.
When you look at those 3 directives, the diplomat, the creative, and the operative, you realize what was actually being asked of this person.
It sounds less like a school office and more like trying to conduct a symphony orchestra while simultaneously running a championship sports team. You're a diplomat, a creative director, and an intelligence officer, all before 10 a.m.
It's insane.
It is insane. But this is the crucible. Because if you have to juggle those 3 identities, you can't do it by just staring at the checklist.
Right. You can't just be good at your job in the traditional sense.
You can't just type fast and smile. Without realizing it, those 3 principals weren't just throwing impossible tasks at a first-year secretary. They were inadvertently building the blueprint for what would become Office Manager University. Because they proved that the role isn't a monolith.
They proved that to survive in this role, you have to categorize your thinking. You have to seamlessly shift between those identities on an hourly basis.
I want to pause here and ask you, the listener, a question. What would you have done if you were sitting at that desk in 2008, balancing 3 completely different visions of leadership, 3 different personalities, 3 different sets of expectations? How do you survive that?
I mean, most people would just quit.
Or burn out entirely. Because here's where it gets really interesting. To actually thrive in that environment, you have to operate on 3 entirely different dimensions at the exact same time, which is exactly how OMU broke this down into their 3 mental altitudes.
Which brings us directly to the framework, deconstructing those 3 altitudes, starting all the way up at 20,000 feet. Identity.
So at 20,000 feet, what are we actually looking at?
The question isn't, what are you doing? The question is, who are you becoming? Are you becoming a trusted, reliable problem solver? Are you a leader? Are you a true representative of the school's mission?
The source material puts a massive emphasis here on character over competence. Why is that distinction so critical at 20,000 feet?
Because people trust professionals before they trust experts.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about it from a parent's perspective. A parent doesn't care if you know the exact keyboard shortcuts for the student information system.
No, they really don't.
That's competence. They care if you look them in the eye, listen to their problem without checking your watch, and genuinely care about their child. That's character.
Yeah.
If you have character, you can learn the software. If you know the software but lack character, you are an absolute liability to the school's culture.
That makes total sense. Okay, so if 20,000 feet is identity, let's drop down a bit. We're out of the clouds. We're at 10,000 feet. Operations.
Right. This is where we ask, how does this office actually operate? This altitude is about customer service, communication, consistency, and culture. It's the systems that support the leadership.
But I want to get really tangible here. The source material talks about intentionally painting a picture of an office that people love walking into. But how? What does that actually look like operationally? Give me a real example.
Okay, let's look at tardy slips. A kid walks in late. In a ground-level office, the tardy intake is right next to the disciplinary office door. The tone is cold. The secretary sighs, hands them a slip, and sends them off.
So operationally, that kid feels punished before they even sit down in class.
Exactly. Their blood pressure is up.
Already on the defensive.
Exactly. But an office operating at 10,000 feet understands that the physical space and the operational flow dictate the psychology of the room.
Right.
So instead of putting the tardy slips next to the discipline office, you move them to the front window. You put a bowl of mints next to them. You standardize the greeting so the secretary says, "Hey, we're just glad you made it today. Grab a slip and have a great morning."
Oh, wow.
You're physically redesigning the room and the system to lower blood pressure. You aren't just reacting to who walks in. You have built an environment that dictates how they feel when they walk in.
You're designing the friction out of the experience.
Exactly.
That is brilliant. That takes the corporate jargon of building culture and makes it visceral. You literally just physically move the tardy slips.
Yeah.
Okay? Which brings us all the way down to the ground. Ground level. Execution.
The daily grind. The phones, the scheduling, the records, the enrollment.
Right. And this is where I want to go back to what I said at the very beginning of this deep dive. Because I read this in the OMU philosophy, and I had to read it twice. And frankly, it blew my mind. So let me get this straight and tell me if I'm understanding this right. You're telling me taking attendance isn't actually about attendance.
No, it's about trust.
Explain that mechanism to me. Because to someone outside the school system, checking a box on a computer next to a kid's name does not sound like a profound trust-building exercise.
At ground level, it is so easy to view taking attendance or filing a record as a small job, a box to check. But if you have that 20,000-foot perspective, you realize there are no small jobs. Every single task, no matter how mundane, is a trust-building mechanism.
But how? How does attendance build trust?
Think about the stakes. When a parent gets an automated text notification that their 7-year-old child is marked absent, but that parent knows for a fact they dropped that child off at the front door 20 minutes ago, what happens?
Pure panic. Absolute terror.
Panic ensues. Trust in the institution fractures instantly. In that parent's mind, the school has lost their child. By executing the ground-level task of attendance with absolute flawless precision, you are protecting the psychological safety of the community. You are protecting trust.
It's the Disney model, or like the Ritz-Carlton.
Exactly. This is the perfect analogy. When you go to a Disney park, the person sweeping the street isn't just removing trash. They are a cast member protecting the magic of the show.
Right.
If a guest looks lost, they don't say, "Not my job, I'm just a sweeper." They stop sweeping. They kneel down to eye level with the kid, give directions, take a photo, and make a joke.
Because Disney understands that they aren't just selling rides. They are managing the psychology of the guest. If the park is dirty, the guest feels unsafe, even if they don't consciously realize why.
And an exceptional school office professional is managing the psychology of the community. When you hand a kid a late pass, you aren't just processing a piece of paper. You have the power to look that kid in the eye and say, "I'm so glad you're here today."
Yeah.
You just change their emotional state before they walk into math class.
Ooh, have you ever noticed that? I want the listener to really reflect on this right now. Have you ever noticed the way a simple 2-minute phone call with a school secretary can completely dictate a parent's entire view of the school district for the next 10 years?
One interaction, that's all it takes.
If the secretary is dismissive, that parent assumes the teachers are dismissive. The principal is dismissive. The district doesn't care. If the secretary is empathetic and competent, the parent believes the entire system is built on empathy and competence. The leverage that this one desk has over the brand of the entire district is staggering.
Which is why the transactional mindset is so dangerous.
Yeah.
If you tell that secretary their job is just to answer the phone, you are severely underarming them for the actual battle they are fighting.
Absolutely.
They are the frontline defenders of the school's reputation, culture, and safety.
So what does this all mean? We've gone from the runway up to 20,000 feet. We've looked at the city grid. We've seen the origin story of the three principles, and we've come back down to the ground to move the tardy slips. How does someone listening to this, whether they are a superintendent, a principal, or sitting at that front desk right now, how do they apply this?
It starts by asking the hard questions. And I mean really confronting the reality of your building. Does your office understand the mission of the school? Or do they only understand the checklist they've been handed?
That is a gut punch of a question.
It has to be. If you're a school leader, have you actually invested in the people who greet every single family that walks through your doors? Do they understand why excellence matters, or are you just telling them to smile more?
And what if the listener is the one sitting at the desk? What if they are the office manager or the secretary listening to this on their commute?
Then the challenge is even more personal. It's time to realize that your title is not your impact.
Wow.
You might be called an administrative assistant, but your impact is director of first impressions, chief problem solver, culture protector. You might already be a leader in your building and simply haven't given yourself the permission to see yourself that way yet.
That is such an empowering shift. Excellence isn't about doing more work. I think that's a trap a lot of us fall into. We think to be better, we have to do 100 more tasks, we need a longer checklist. But what OMU is saying is that excellence isn't about doing more, it's about understanding more.
Exactly. When you climb to 20,000 feet, the picture completely changes. The mission becomes crystal clear. The daily, exhausting grind suddenly has profound meaning attached to it.
Yeah.
And the magic happens when you bring that perspective back down. When you return to the ground, you don't just complete tasks anymore. You execute them with purpose.
It's the difference between a job and a calling. And it completely validates the exhaustion that office professionals feel. If you're going home exhausted because you answered 100 phones, that feels draining. But if you go home exhausted because you just spent 8 hours protecting the culture of a building and managing the emotional well-being of hundreds of people, well, you're still exhausted, but you're a hero.
Your air traffic control, you kept the planes in the sky?
I will never look at a school front office the same way again. But it makes you wonder, if the person at the front desk is actually the one shaping the culture, the one setting the tone for every parent and every student who walks in, what does that mean for how we train our principals? Are we teaching the wrong people how to lead?
Tomorrow morning, someone will walk into your office. They'll never know everything you do behind the scenes, but they'll know exactly how you made them feel. That's the power of seeing your work from 20,000 feet.